Hello and welcome, allies, back to the AOA Feed the Beast Unleashed server. As always, this is Bosox Fan with you. Gonna take you on a little adventure today. So first off, as always, I'll show you a little bit of what's been going on around the area. Not too much has changed since our last episode about the MJ power, but a few little things. Starting to work a little bit on upgrading these. We had the 2 low voltage solar arrays, which is 8 of the solar panels. We had 2 of those going and then some regular ones. So I'm slowly upgrading these to the advanced solar panels, which generate the 32 EU per tick, as well as 8 during the night in rain, which is good because this MFE is not, or MFSU is not staying charged, and we'll show you why in a sec. Other new thing, I think we may have added a few more bees. Got a common bee going here. Got a cultivated as well, but not a princess yet, so we're still working on that, but very basic beginning stages of bees. This is, as you may have seen the sign, this is the start of what's going to be a subway system for the base. Kind of we'll have the main terminal up on the ground level, and then you'll come down, and there's going to be carts on this side too, and obviously we'll replace some of these with some powered carts and stuff to get them going, but I am new to the new recipes for the carts, so I'm going to need to do a little research before I do anything on that. Wow, they sound close. So yeah, we got kind of a color thing going westbound on the green line. That's going to head back to our spawn base. We got the red line that's going to go north to a island that we found maybe eventually. We got the orange line, not really much, and then the blue line. The blue line is actually I've been using as a shortcut back to the base. So we can come right over here, and this will be another access tunnel. When we go up the stairs, that'll take us back to the regular base, and you might remember the MJ power area. Actually, grab some of this real quick for our demonstration. Alright, so let's go back upstairs to the EU power room and see what we got going on there, and go over some of the basics of how the EU power works without Greg Tech, and what my suggestions would be for you to start. So this is the machine why we're losing all of our power. We got the mass fabricator going, making the UU matter for us so we can get some better solar panels. Pretty much the only way to get iridium because it's impossible to find. So that's big changes there. We changed up kind of the wiring a bit. Got another MFSU. This one is after that. So this is pulling all the power it can from these generators and all of the solar panels. And then this is close enough before that it will still charge itself. And then this changes it over to medium and low. And then it comes up to our machines over here. Alright, so EU power. First we'll start with the basics. First thing you're going to want to do if you're looking to get EU power going is you need some way to generate the power. And then you're also going to need some place to store the power. So those are and then transport the power. So those are the 3 things we're going to go over in this episode. There are things called windmills and water mills in this game. Not a huge fan of the windmills and water mills. They're a lot of work and not really much. I mean, it's a good, decent flow of power, but honestly, at the beginning of the game, you only have so much that you need to do with the EU power, so it's not really that important to get these going, and they all require the generator anyways, so I would suggest going with the generator. Now what the generator is going to allow you to do, actually I'll go to it from here. Generator, very simple, iron furnace, RE battery, nothing crazy there. But what the generator is going to allow you to do is cook stuff. So we got a few of them here, and it's going to cook stuff and turn it into EU. Now the amount of EU that it creates is dependent on the item. So if we type in EU, it's going to give us all the things that can produce EU for the most part. I mean, other things that store EU or anything with EU in the names here as well, but this will give you a good general idea of all the things you can cook in a generator. Now, as you'll see, most of these things at the start are wood planks and wood products, all 750 EU. Nothing crazy awesome, but you can throw them in there, you can make a little power, and that's good. Even the wood is 750, so if you have wood, make it the planks, and you will obviously get the more power out of it. Some interesting things: blaze rods, you get you 6,000 EU. Some other things of note: coal, 4,000 EU. Now, coal coke, if you cook it in the coke oven, the Railcraft multi-block add-on, which I'll show you in a second, which is right behind us. You put a piece of coal in there, and it will make it into coal coke, and that's actually going to increase your output to 16,000 EU. So you get 4 times as much if you put it in there. And on top of that, when you create the coal coke in the coal coke oven, it creates creosote oil in this part. So we got some sugar going over here, but creates this creosote oil, and every 1,000 parts of that is equal to a bucket. You get a bucket of that, and that's worth another 12,500 EU. So, kind of working on doubling up your riches there if you go that route. Other things you can cook in the coke oven are obviously sugar. So if you just get some sugar cane like we had, just go into your crafting table, make it into sugar, and throw it into the coke oven, and boom, it's going to make sugar charcoal. And once this is done, you can put it back in there, and it's going to turn it into sugar coke. And then that's going to bring you from the 1,000 EU up to 2,000 EU. And that's a nice little free way to get some EU. And that's also going to create creosote oil. Not as much as coal coke does, but a little bit. And that's going to increase the free renewable resource, because coal is obviously not renewable, and charcoal is not something that you can cook into the coke oven to make the coal coke. You can make charcoal from wood in the coke oven, and it creates creosote oil, but you don't actually you can't turn the charcoal into coal coke, or at least you couldn't before. I actually haven't tried it on the server yet, so feel free to try it on your own if you want, and let me know if I'm wrong, because I'd love to be able to do that. Some other things you can do: we mentioned the creosote oil. Pretty much any kind of oil, seed oil, biomass, honey, as you can see, apple juice, I think ethanol. Actually, that's a little bit more. Yeah, ethanol can create the 50,000 EU if you get that going. Lava is going to be done with a different machine in the geothermal generator. That creates a 20,000 EU, and that's pretty much the only thing you can cook in the geothermal generator. So if you do have access to the nether, or have some lava pits nearby, and you get a pump going and some tanks, and you want to turn that into power, that's a good source. And it also pumps it out at 20 EU per tick, a little faster, so it burns through your supply a little quicker than the regular generator does. So yeah, honey, all those things going to create your 12,500 EU for you. Biofuel's a little different. If you're able to make biofuel, which I think's here, can't really see the stats because of the arrangement, but if you're able to create biofuel, that's worth 50,000 EU for each capsule or container. And then you also got these meat capsules, which are 6,250 EU. If you feel like going that route. And we mentioned the wood stuff, and the geothermal generator uses the lava. We got a couple of those going over here, so you just put the lava up here, and it puts the power in, and you get the bucket back. Not sure about the containers. I don't think you get like the cells back or anything. So I would stick with buckets and some sort of a storage tank system next to it to store the lava, and then just have a few buckets you can quickly grab bucket and put it in here, and kind of like we did with the Fuelia last episode with the MJ. So earlier we were showing you solar panels. Those are what you are going to want to start making once you probably have like maybe a generator going, because a generator is good because your solar panel is not going to create much power. The basic solar panels are very easy to make, but they definitely do not create that much power. So we got this measly old solar panel. It doesn't cost very much, but it only creates 1 EU per tick during the day and 0 at night. So even those, we had these low voltage arrays, which is 8 of them with the LV transformer, and that's still only making 8 EU per tick. So those two are doing 16, and then at night, which I think it is right now, create nothing. So you really want to get to this advanced solar panel as quick as possible, and that's why it's kind of a later game, because this does require the 1 iridium ingot in order to do it, plus some uranium. You're going to need some glowstone either through villages or structures, or have to go to the nether to get some glowstone. And then got the circuits you're going to have to create, and then this irradiant reinforced plate is really the kicker. Advanced alloy is pretty simple. Radiant glass pane's pretty simple. You need some MJ machines going. The induction smelter so that you can... Or no, these reinforced glass isn't... Never mind. That's a different thing I was thinking of. Hardened glass. But you get the reinforced glass. It gives you 7, and you need 6 of them for the recipe to make 6 of these, which would be good enough to make 2 of these advanced solar panels for each of these recipes. And then every 6 times you do it, you'll get an extra... Every time, 6 times you make these, you'll have an extra one to be able to make an extra recipe. So, kind of an odd number they picked. And then the irradiant thing requires the UU matter you need to create the scenarium part. So you need a mass fabricator to go this route, which is, you know, kind of annoying because you're not generating very good power, which is why you need the generators going with some either coal coke or some of the other things that we mentioned earlier to get you some power, because you need 1 million EU to create each UU matter. So that's at least 2 million EU that you need just to make this recipe. I'm not saying you're lucky and you can find an iridium ingot out in the wild. If you're lucky enough to do that, then you only need the 2 UU matter. Otherwise you're going to need 7 more to create the iridium ingot out of the UU matter. Press that up and mix it up with those to create your iridium iron plate. And then you make it the reinforced version, and then add the scenarium part, the diamond, and the other stuff, and we'll get our advanced solar panel. Now what that's allowing us to do is it generates 32 EU per tick during the day, and also will generate 8 EU per tick during night, and when it's, or no, 8 or 1, I can't remember. I'm probably wrong there. Don't quote me on the numbers, but it generates a little bit of power even when it's raining or nighttime as well, so a little bit of a bonus there. And obviously these advanced solar panels are the base solar panel to make both the hybrid and the ultimate hybrid solar panels. Now when you are making your solar panels, don't be foolish and create a hybrid solar panel if your end goal is to turn it into ultimate hybrid, because in order to do that, you're going to need 8 of them, as opposed to just creating the 1 out of the advanced solar panel and then the machines. You use a lot more materials to do it this way, and it's slow and annoying. But these are very good because the 8 of them equal the 1 ultimate hybrid solar panel in every way possible mathematically. And one of the cool things you can do with an ultimate hybrid solar panel once you create it is if we right click on it, we can create 8 of them from this. So if you have 1 of these and you're powering a bunch of things, you could separate them into their own little power grids, and 1 of these will probably more than suffice to power the 1 machine. So you get a few more extra solar panels out of there without having to actually create the advanced solar panels. So save you a little bit of work there. If hybrid solar panels are your end game, I'd suggest creating one of these if you can get the 64 iridium and the 64 uranium, and the 3 stacks of glowstone. I guess is sometimes kind of hard to come by too for some people. I'd go that route if I was you. Now a lot of people say solar panels are OP'd because they are free and don't require any other resources, which you may agree with, but they are very nice for not having to worry about, maintaining things, especially something like a mass fabricator where we just want to let it run overnight, let the chunk loader keep it loaded, and have it make the UU matter for us as we go along. Now eventually we can add a recycler and put some of our scrap and have it create some scrap and feed that into there too, kind of help speed up the process, but we're not quite there yet. So that pretty much takes care of the generation of EU. There is nuclear power for the late game, which I think is mostly available without Greg Tech. Not all the Greg Tech stuff's there, but I think there you can still create the nukes, and I believe create the nuclear power. I may be wrong, so maybe it's just for creating nukes, but I know there's a nuclear reactor, and I will eventually be getting to that, so we can show you at some point and learn all about that, but that's going to be later in the game. Now once you generate all this EU, you inevitably need to store it somewhere. Now I've shown you the MFSU, which is the super high collector for the power, the EU power. It holds a million EU, or no, 10 million EU, excuse me. Yeah, 10 million EU. And then there's an MFE, which is the medium storage unit, which carries the 600,000 EU, and then the bat box, which I think 60,000 maybe EU, not very much at all, and that's for your low voltage stuff. Now, certain items that are charged by EU are only going to be allowed to charge in the certain boxes. So we have this MFSU here. I would not be able to charge, say, my how does that work? I guess it would be more like the bat box. I wouldn't be able to charge my advanced chest plate or something like that required power. There are incompatibilities. Can't really think of any more off the top of my head, but feel free to play around and just keep that in mind. So if something doesn't go in there, doesn't mean that you can't charge it. Just means you might be using the wrong thing. Bat box is probably going to be the first thing you're going to want to make. Store up a little bit of power to start. And then after that, you're going to move on to your MFE, and then eventually an MFSU, which will be able to store up the 10 million EU for you in order to keep your machines running happily throughout the night, even when power is not being generated by your solar panels or any of your generators or anything. Now, one thing to keep in mind are the transformers as well when you're using the power. So if you have high voltage, like this wire's coming out of an MFSU, it's coming at high voltage. These machines only accept low voltage, the 32 EU per tick, while this is pumping out 512. Not good. Blow up, make a big kaboom, scare the living shit out of you. So you need to create these transformers. Now the white one, this one's an MV transformer. You want the high power always coming into the 3-dot interface, and then if one of the other let me cut this away. Now all the other 5 sides of the block have the one side, and that's gonna bring out the lower voltage. So the medium's gonna bring it down to medium power. That's gonna go through, and under this block there's an LV transformer, and that one's kind of brownish, kind of like the bat box. And that's changing it, same thing, into high voltage into the 3-prong, and then 1 prong out, and it's coming out low voltage here, so we can keep all these powered. Now this power coming in through here is all high voltage, so it doesn't really matter. These are all producing their power. They don't accept power, so they're fine, and then this is just taking whatever power it can gobble up that's not being used. and that's changing it over. So the last thing that you got to worry about is how to get it from point A to point B. Now, as you can see, we're using the glass fiber cables throughout our base. They are, in my opinion, the best to use. They can't do the ultra high power like the HV cables can, but they hold the power in the cable much better. So basically, for every block that their power has to travel, it loses a little bit of its power. Now that's dependent on the type of wire that you're using. So the basic ultra low current tin cables that are uninsulated are the best for your basic stuff, but they only can carry up to 5 EU per tick. So you're not going to want to use them with your generators, but if you have windmills or just the basic solar panels or the water mills, those are good items that you can use the tin ultra low current cables for, because those will only have a loss of 1 EU every 40 blocks that it travels. Now it doesn't just lose the EU after the 40th block, it splits it up and loses a bit each block as it goes, and eventually after 40 it would equal 1. So if you want to do the math, go right ahead. The other basic cables that I see a lot of people use are the copper and the gold insulated cables. Now, while easy to make, those are horrible to use. Case in point, I mean, you may need to use the gold and the copper to start just because you are limited and don't have very many diamonds available at the start, but as soon as you get the diamonds, invest them in the fiber cables, because copper will lose 1 EU for after going 5 blocks. So if you only got one solar panel out there and you're bringing it down in a copper cable more than 5 blocks, you're not going to be bringing any EU in at all. So you might as well not even waste the materials. The gold is even worse. It's 1 EU per 2.5 blocks. So every 2.5 blocks you lose your EU. Now that can carry a little bit higher EU per EU packets, so you can still get by with gold, but still not recommended unless absolutely necessary. And now the gold will accept the medium packets, while the copper only accepts the low packets. Keep that in mind. And then the fiber cable will accept the high packets, but not the super high ultimate packets. As we said, the tin goes 40 blocks without losing an EU, and so does the glass fiber cable. Will go 40 blocks before it loses its first EU, and that's why I like to use it. Now the other one you can use in here is the high voltage cables, and the 4 times insulated is the route to go, because that keeps your best loss ratio, and that's 1 EU for every 1.25 blocks. So don't use those if you're using 1 EU per tick from a solar panel, because you're going to lose it in a single block, pretty much. So that is why you see glass fiber cables, and that is why we waste so many diamonds on them, because otherwise EU power is not even worth doing. That wraps up our tutorial on the EU power here. As always, as a BoSox fan on the AOA Feed the Beast Unleashed server, I thank you all for watching, and hopefully we'll catch you next time. Thanks.